Okay, listen up. There's going to be a lot of instruction today, partly because I love helping people with mobility issues, and partly because this shit just isn't taught in classes. We're just expected to know how to perform some of these movements. So hop into something that you can move well in, and let's get started. Today's workout consists of 2 parts. The first part is the Tabata, which is just interval training. So it's 20 seconds of work, then 20 seconds of rest for 8 rounds. Each round consists of 4 movements. The first movement is going to be a variation of a push-up, then air squats, then sit-ups, and finally lunges. Then we're going to take a 2-minute break. We're going to jump into the final workout, which is going to be a 10-to-1. That's going to consist of 2 movements. The first movement is going to be burpees. So we're going to do 10 burpees, and the second movement will be air squats. And we'll do 1 air squat. Then we'll do 9 burpees, 2 air squats, 8 burpees, 3 air squats, 7 burpees, 4 air squats, all the way down to 1 burpee and 10 air squats. Now let's go over those movements. Our first movement today is going to be a variation of a push-up. It's what I call a Superman push-up. So I want to start today with our feet together because I really want to focus on engaging the deep core of the body. So try this for a minute. Start with the feet wider than hips. Try squeezing the glutes. Try engaging the core. You lose all of the activation when the feet are slightly wide. So see if you can bring the feet together, bringing the toes to touch. Now squeeze the glutes. All of a sudden you find that neutral pelvis. Hug the belly in and up the front of the spine. You create that length from the inside. So I want to keep this core engagement throughout this workout. So toes touching. We're going to come all the way to the ground. The chest is going to touch, the hips will touch, and the toes will be on the ground. Everything else should be off of the mat. So the shins, the quads, everything. So once we come all the way down to the chest, we're going to lift the hands off the mat. And then the hands will come to the mat, and we'll do a push-up for 1. So let me show you how that looks. Feet together, pressing back through the heels, wrapping those elbows in. So we're screwing the hands into the ground so we create that external rotation in the shoulders. We come all the way to the ground, chest touches, hands lift up. Then we press up for 1. Keeping the core engaged the whole time. We're doing that for 20 seconds, as many reps as you can, but quality over quantity all the time. Then we're going to move into our second movement. Our second movement is going to be air squats. So let's go over a few things that I see wrong in air squats. First off, when the feet are wide, we lose that core engagement. Second thing I see is the toes splayed out. When we start collapsing at the ankle joint, at the medial arch, the knees start caving inward, and we lose that stability at the hip. Also, when people begin to lower in a squat, I see the knees coming forward, I see the heels lifting off the mat. A lot of times that's an impingement at the ankle joint that we need to work out. So if that's you, for now, I want you to stay high as long as you can keep the heels on the ground and just work inside those thighs. Making sure those knees track wide. So just staying up here if you need to, even sitting down into a chair and then standing up. But let's go over how I want a squat to look. So toes pointing forward, feet somewhere inside a shoulder distance, so between sitting bone distance and armpit distance apart. Just like in the push-up when we're screwing the hands into the ground, creating that external rotation of the shoulders. Want to do the same thing with the feet. So the left foot will screw into the ground counterclockwise, while the right foot clockwise. This will create a lift through the medial arch of the foot, a stability at the ankle joint as well as at the hip, and it'll allow the knees to track wide. And I want the hips to go back. So the knees aren't coming forward, but hips go back, knees track wide, trying to keep the big toe on the mat, and then we come up to stand. Just one more thing too, we do not want to lose the core engagement. So squeeze the glutes, engage the core, create that length from the inside, and then lower and stand back up. If we lose the core, if we don't engage, if we don't squeeze the glutes, and that pelvis is slightly tilted forward because it didn't find its neutral, we start to create some problems in the back. And so let's try to avoid those from the start just by squeezing the glutes, engaging the core. Now let's move on to our third movement. The third movement is sit-ups. It's probably the less complicated of all the movements today, but I want to make sure that we keep the core engaged so that we lift up through the front of the chest. A lot of times we lose the core and we're just rounding the spine and we're really hanging out in the meat. So let's come to the ground. We'll butterfly the knees so it gives us some space in between the legs here. And we'll reach the arms up overhead, almost like we're holding a big beach ball. Core engaged the entire time, and we lift up through the front of the chest. We lead with the heart, and then we come forward. So let's move on to movement 4. So the fourth movement is lunges. So I want you stepping forward on a lunge, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. But when you step forward on the lunge, I want that load to be more on the back leg as we touch the knee. So if we were holding the weight up overhead and we were more forward in the front leg, that weight will be pulling us forward. So can we get the weight more onto the back leg, but not too far back so we create that arch in the back, but just neutral, and then we step back. Meanwhile, if we were to step back into a lunge, all the load will be on that front leg, so it will be hard to hold that weight up overhead, so we'd be leaning forward as we step back, and a lot of people find it hard to come back, to bring the weight back into that back leg before we tap that knee down and step forward. So let's work on stepping forward today in the lunge. Now let's move into our final movement today. So our final movement today is going to be burpees. So the two main things I see wrong with burpees is that people do a strict push-up, and the second thing they do is they hop forward. And so by doing a strict push-up, we rip apart our shoulders, and by hopping forward, we exert a lot of energy. But can we make a burpee more of a skill movement? Let me explain. So for today's purposes, I want to see if we can start with the feet together so that we can engage that core as we've been doing the whole practice. So we'll squeeze the glutes, we'll engage the core, and then we're going to come to the ground. So you bend the knees when you come to the ground, place the hands, hop back, come all the way to the ground. Then we're going to arch the back, and we're just going to snap the feet forward and stand up. Come to the ground, arch the back, snap the feet forward. So there's no push-up, there's no hopping forward. We're saving our energy, and we're working on this becoming a skill movement that translates to some of the bigger exercises in the CrossFit world.